No one expected this. For generations, America was the destination, the dream, the escape, the place people came to, not from. But today, something unprecedented is unfolding. Quietly, steadily, and now in growing numbers, Americans are preparing to leave. Not just for vacation. Not just for retirement. But for good. They are renouncing citizenships, selling homes, relocating families, transferring assets, and turning their gaze outward. What was once a fringe idea has become a serious plan for millions. And the reasons run far deeper than politics. On the surface, it doesn't make sense. The United States remains one of the richest countries in the world. It has vast natural resources, global influence, advanced technology, and an image, at least historically, of freedom and opportunity. But behind that image is a growing sense of unease. The systems that once made America exceptional, healthcare, education, housing, civic trust, are straining. For many, they've already failed. And for a rising number of Americans, the conclusion is simple. The cost of staying now outweighs the promise of staying. The signs are everywhere. In online forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube channels, the phrase, "leaving America," is no longer dramatic, it's practical. How to move to Portugal. How to get residency in Costa Rica. What it takes to qualify for a digital nomad visa in Spain. These conversations used to belong to retirees and fringe idealists. Now, they include middle-class families, tech workers, nurses, veterans, and young professionals. And they all say the same thing: they don't feel safe here anymore. Some are fleeing political polarization. In recent years, the divisions have deepened into something far more dangerous. It's not just disagreement, it's mutual distrust. Elections are disputed. Institutions are doubted. Violence simmers under the surface. People on both sides of the political spectrum now talk openly about civil unrest, secession, or collapse. And for those unwilling to live in a country permanently at war with itself, the only answer is to leave. Others are motivated by economics. The cost of living has spiraled out of control in many parts of the U.S. Healthcare premiums rival mortgage payments. College tuition cripples families for decades. Rent in major cities exceeds what many earn in a month. Owning a home, once the bedrock of the American dream, now feels like a fantasy, even for dual-income households. And while wages have stagnated, inflation hasn't. The math doesn't work. For these Americans, moving to a country with lower healthcare costs, free education, or subsidized childcare isn't just a lifestyle choice. It's survival. Then there are the digital migrants, a generation that can work from anywhere and increasingly chooses anywhere but here. They're not driven by desperation, but by opportunity. They've compared the quality of life in Mexico City, Lisbon, or Chiang Mai to Los Angeles or New York, and made their choice. These are Americans with skills, mobility, and ambition. And they're building lives, and businesses, abroad. Even safety is no longer a given. Mass shootings, police violence, and a general sense of unpredictability haunt daily life. Parents send children to school with anxiety. Public gatherings come with risk assessments. Cities once filled with opportunity now evoke fear, whether from crime, homelessness, or social breakdown. For families, especially those with young children, this has become a breaking point. The idea of safety in America now feels uncertain, and for many, that's no longer a risk worth taking. And there's something else, something harder to quantify, but deeply felt. A loss of meaning. A sense that the social contract is broken. That no one is coming to fix it. That the government doesn't listen. That the news doesn't tell the truth. That community is disappearing. Americans increasingly report feeling isolated, disconnected, and hopeless about the future. In this void, the idea of a new start, in a quieter, more functional, more affordable country, becomes incredibly powerful. So where are they going? The list is growing. Portugal has become a top destination for its low cost of living, mild climate, and accessible visa programs. Mexico is absorbing thousands of expats every month, not just retirees, but families and remote workers. Canada, despite its colder weather and rising costs, remains a popular choice for its healthcare and relative stability. Costa Rica, Ecuador, Panama, and Thailand are all seeing rising numbers of long-term American arrivals. Even countries like Georgia and Albania, once overlooked, are offering favorable conditions for U.S. immigrants looking to stretch their income and escape the noise. Some are moving permanently. Others are testing the waters, renting short-term, keeping ties to the U.S., just in case. But the trend is real, and it's accelerating. In 2022, over 1,600 Americans formally renounced their citizenship. In 2023, that number doubled. And in 2024, it's expected to rise again. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. For every one person giving up a passport, thousands more are opening foreign bank accounts, applying for second residencies, researching escape plans. And what makes this moment different is that many of those leaving aren't bitter or angry. They're just done waiting. Done hoping that things will turn around. Done watching from the sidelines as the systems they trusted deteriorate. For them, leaving isn't protest, it's preservation. And yet, the U.S. government doesn't seem to be paying attention. There is no national conversation about why so many citizens are preparing to walk away. No real strategy to retain talent, families, or entrepreneurs. The assumption is that people will always come back, or never leave. But that assumption is no longer safe. Because for many, what once felt unthinkable now feels like the only option left. If millions of Americans are quietly preparing to leave, and thousands already have, what does that say about the state of the nation? What happens when the people who can afford to leave, do? What's left behind? And more importantly, who will follow? The answers aren't comfortable. But they're necessary. Because what's driving this wave isn't one crisis. It's all of them. Politics, economics, culture, safety, identity, each one fraying the national fabric thread by thread. And if nothing is done, the unraveling will continue. Not with headlines. Not with riots. But with silence, with more people quietly packing their things, logging off, and not coming back. And as the second wave begins to take shape, it's no longer just individuals making the move, it's entire ecosystems. Families are bringing elderly parents and young children. Business owners are shifting operations overseas. Tech startups are registering abroad. Even schools, churches, and community groups are re-establishing themselves in foreign cities where American expats are gathering in unexpected numbers. Small towns in Portugal now host English-speaking support circles. Cafes in Colombia offer dollar-priced menus. Dentists in Costa Rica advertise U.S. standard care, at a fraction of the cost. The American diaspora is growing, not as a scattered exception, but as an emerging shadow society outside the borders of the U.S. itself. This phenomenon is reshaping foreign communities, too. Some welcome it: new money, new energy, new jobs. Others resist, fearing gentrification, cultural dilution, or rising prices. But no matter how they respond, the presence is there. In some neighborhoods of Mexico City or Lisbon, you're more likely to hear English than Spanish or Portuguese. Entire apartment blocks are now owned by Americans looking to escape not just the costs, but the feeling of decay, the sense that something vital in American life is quietly slipping away. But even more telling is how the mindset is changing inside the US among those who haven't yet left. The question is no longer, why would someone leave America? The question is, how hard is it to do? Online searches for best countries for Americans to move to have surged. How to get dual citizenship is trending. Financial planners are now being asked to help relocate wealth, not just grow it. And immigration lawyers in countries like Spain, Uruguay, and New Zealand report record inquiries, not from the ultra-rich, but from middle-class professionals, teachers, and nurses. And the motivations are evolving. It's no longer just political fatigue or cost of living anxiety. It's existential. People are asking themselves what kind of future they can realistically expect in the US, and many don't like the answer. Climate disasters are hitting harder and more often: floods, fires, hurricanes, destroying homes and hollowing out entire regions. Insurance companies are pulling out of states like Florida and California, leaving homeowners with skyrocketing premiums or no protection at all. Infrastructure is aging. Clean water access is no longer a given. Blackouts in major cities are normalized. And through it all, people are expected to just keep going. Those who can't leave are preparing in other ways. They're downsizing. Moving out of big cities. Homeschooling their kids. Growing food. Stockpiling medicine. And in many cases, forming informal communities that mirror the mentality of those who've already left, a life apart, even while still within the borders. It's an emotional emigration before the physical one. A quiet resignation. And this, perhaps, is the most dangerous part of the trend. Not that people are leaving, but that they're emotionally detaching from the country itself. They're no longer invested in fixing it. They no longer believe in reform. They aren't watching the news to stay informed. They're watching it to decide how much time they have left before it's time to go. And as more Americans find new lives abroad, with better healthcare, lower stress, stronger communities, and a renewed sense of peace, they don't come back. And they tell others. Word spreads. Not through headlines, but through personal networks, vlogs, newsletters, conversations. And that's how the quiet exodus grows, not through revolution, but through relief. At some point, the numbers become too large to ignore. When towns hollow out. When schools close from falling enrollment. When tax bases shrink. When talent disappears. When patriotism no longer outweighs exhaustion. The tipping point doesn't come with a bang, it comes with a whisper. And by the time officials recognize it, the momentum is already irreversible. This isn't about hating America. For most, it never was. It's about survival. It's about sanity. It's about finding a life where basic systems work, where neighbors feel safe, where health doesn't bankrupt you, and where the future feels like something to hope for, not just endure. Because the people leaving aren't extremists or radicals. They're teachers, programmers, nurses, young families, retirees, people who once believed in the dream, people who contributed, paid taxes, voted. And now, they're quietly closing that chapter. Not in anger. Not in protest. But in quiet disbelief that it came to this. And now, with each passing year, the movement is becoming institutionalized. What was once an individual escape plan is turning into an industry. Real estate firms specialize in helping Americans find homes abroad. Private banking services offer offshore accounts tailored to U.S. citizens looking to protect assets from domestic volatility. Migration consultants are building entire businesses around second passports, golden visas, and relocation tax strategies. Even health insurance companies are offering international plans designed specifically for Americans who no longer live in the country, but still want US quality care without US level pricing. But the most telling shift is generational. Older Americans may still hold on to the idea that staying is patriotic, that to leave is to give up. But for millennials and Gen Z, that emotional tether is fraying. They came of age during school shootings, endless wars, unaffordable education, and collapsing institutions. They watched their parents lose homes in the Great Recession, only to now face a housing market even more broken. They see climate disaster not as a distant threat, but as a present fact. For them, the decision isn't radical. It's rational. Digital nomadism, once a lifestyle choice, is becoming a political act. The idea that you don't have to be tied to a failing system is now common sense in many corners of the internet. Young Americans are working freelance jobs, launching businesses online, and living in countries where rent is half, stress is low, and mental health isn't a luxury. From Bali to Belgrade, entire micro-communities of American remote workers now live lives that feel more free than the one they left behind. Even retirees, long considered the most anchored demographic, are making moves. With fixed incomes and ballooning healthcare costs in the US, many are heading to Mexico, Panama, or Portugal, places where Social Security stretches further and quality of life is higher. They aren't looking to come back. They've found something they thought was gone: peace. Meanwhile, U.S. policymakers remain focused on immigration into the country, rarely acknowledging the flow out. There is no task force, no data dashboard, no strategic plan to understand what the long-term impacts might be. And yet, those impacts are mounting. Every high earner who leaves is a tax base lost. Every skilled worker who relocates is talent that won't return. Every family that starts a life elsewhere means future generations that won't grow up under the American flag. And while the numbers still appear small on paper, the trend line is steep and self-reinforcing. The more people leave, the more others consider it. The more success stories circulate, the more normalized it becomes. Once it was taboo. Now, it's a question of logistics. How soon can I go? Not, should I? But, how? And beneath all of this is the fear that few want to name aloud. What if this is a sign of irreversible decline? What if the American experiment, as it was envisioned, has entered its final chapter? If the people most capable of building, fixing, leading, and dreaming are quietly opting out, what happens next? This isn't a story about numbers. It's about trajectory. About momentum. About what it means when a critical mass of people lose faith not in a party, or a president, but in the very idea of home. And for those who remain, the departure of others raises uncomfortable questions. Will services degrade faster as populations shift? Will political power concentrate in new, more extreme directions? Will neighborhoods collapse as tax revenue dries up? Will those who stay, by choice or by circumstance, inherit a country increasingly hollowed out from the inside? Because once enough people leave, the change becomes permanent. Not because they won't return, but because the country they left no longer exists in the same way. Its culture changes. Its economy shifts. Its optimism drains. And in time, what was once a global beacon of opportunity becomes a cautionary tale of what happens when a nation stops listening to its own people. And still, the movement grows, silent, determined, and deeply human. Because this is still only the beginning.